Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to the stately Vaughn Manor. And today, it's Epic Comic Book Wednesday. Every Wednesday, I'll talk about a certain comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. Steve Donoghue on his channel will talk about that same comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. And this week, we're talking about the Sentinel of the Spaceways. Yes! We're talking about the Silver Surfer! The Silver Surfer. Most specifically, this week we're going to be talking about the original Silver Surfer comic books. The first, how many issues? The first 18 issues of the Silver Surfer comic book that are contained in this Omnibus volume, the Silver Surfer Omnibus. Now, these issues were mostly written by Stan Lee. Well, they were all written by Stan Lee, but they were mostly drawn, except for the last issue, by John Buscema. And John Buscema just does a magnificent job on these issues. This is an artistic masterpiece of comic book art. And the stories by Stan Lee are pretty darn good too. So, as a character, the character of the Silver Surfer was created by Jack Kirby, actually. He's the one that came up with the idea of the Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer, who is a herald for the planet-devouring Galactus. And they showed up in the Fantastic Four. And you can find the Silver Surfer's original adventures in those old issues of the Fantastic Four, and they're collected in this epic collection. This is the Silver Surfer Epic Collection, Volume 1. And this has all of the Silver Surfer's initial appearances in the Fantastic Four. If you've got all the Fantastic Four epic collections, you don't really need this, although this does have some issues from Tales to Astonish 92 and 93 that were basically Hulk stories, and the Silver Surfer was in those Hulk stories. So all this stuff in this epic collection, it's all Silver Surfer stuff from before he had his own series. So he's just a guest star or antagonist in the Fantastic Four issues. And they're pretty cool. The artwork by Jack Kirby is magnificent. It's great stuff. But if you already have the Hulk Epic Collections and the Fantastic Four Epic Collections, you don't really need this. But it is cool just because it has all those initial Silver Surfer stories in one volume. So all of this came before he got his own series. And all of that is available in this. Someday there will be an Epic Collection Volume 2. They haven't come out with one yet. I mean, I've been waiting years and years for them to do that, and they never did. So when the Omnibus became available again, when they reprinted the Omnibus, I just got this, which is great. The artwork in this is so fantastic. I'm glad to have it presented in an oversized volume so you can really, bask in its glory. So this was an interesting comic book for a couple of reasons. Stan Lee has said that the character he liked writing the most is the Silver Surfer, which might seem surprising until you realize that Stan Lee had a column called Stan Lee's Soapbox. And this, in a way, was kind of his comic book soapbox, because the Silver Surfer would say all of the things about humanity that Stan Lee wanted to say. He put a lot of himself, Stan Lee did, into the character of the Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer, who was once the herald of Galactus, but he's left behind on Earth because he betrayed Galactus. And he's trapped on Earth. The Sentinel of the Spaceways cannot escape the space of Earth because there is a barrier there put up by Galactus. So he's trapped with all the crazy humans, and he really points out all the ways that human beings are crazy, how they act irrationally. And a lot of that is straight from Stanley's own feelings about the foibles and insanities of the human race. So the first issue is this one. And that is our initial splash page by John Buscema. This initial issue was inked by Joe Sinnott. An interesting thing about the first few issues of this, I think it was the first 7 issues of this, they were larger, or they were longer than the normal comics. Marvel tried something here. They tried to make these comics longer. They think they were 37 pages long. Much longer than a normal comic book, but it was more expensive. It was 25 cents instead of the 15 cents that comic books were going for at the time. So it was more expensive, but you had a lot more room for the story and a lot more room for the art. And the artwork in this series is just so magnificent. Here we have the Silver Surfer rescuing a pilot who's gone down, and he's rescued the pilot, but when he tries to return the pilot to the aircraft carrier, the distrustful humans who think he captured the pilot open fire on him, as humans like to do. And he's like, "What, are you guys crazy? I just saved this guy." And so the Silver Surfer will do something that he does very, very often in these issues, is that he will soliloquize about how terrible and crazy people are, how irrational they are, how they live on this perfect planet that they are destroying, and how they cannot give up violence and war and all of that stuff. And that's what he's doing here, very dramatically, as you can see. And in this scene, he's also lamenting, I'm trapped here on this earth. And then he has a flashback to his own world. So we're getting the origin of the Silver Surfer, which was completely invented by Stan Lee. Jack Kirby had nothing to do with this origin. I'm not sure he was even consulted about the origin of this character. But he's reminiscing about his time on his home world, which it was very, very civilized to a fault. Everybody lived these comfortable, wonderful lives. But the Silver Surfer at the time, before he was the Silver Surfer, he was just like, there's just something not fulfilling about this, and I've got to try to figure out what it might be. So he wasn't really fulfilled. He didn't feel comfortable on his homeworld. So we have these initial flashbacks, and then we go flash forward to the present time when he's attacked by Yetis. He's attacked by Yetis. This is something that happens in comic books now and again. Then he has some flashbacks to some of the issues, some of the stories you could find in that epic collection I just held up. Some adventures from his recent past he has flashbacks of. And he's talking about how he renounced his heritage. Now, why did he do that? We're going to go to this scene here with his beloved, whose name I am forgetting. It's Shala. Her name was Shala. And he's in love with her, and we have these wonderfully, beautifully illustrated scenes by John Buscema. But what happens in this initial story is that his homeworld is menaced by Galactus. Galactus is coming to destroy his planet. And there's no hope. There's nothing they can do. They pretty much give up. Galactus is coming to destroy his homeworld. And Zen Law, by the way, is the name of his planet. So he decides to, you know what? Everybody's given up, but build me a ship. I'm going to fly out there, and I'm going to see if I can't do something to stop it. It's hopeless anyway, right? What do we have to lose? I'll go out there, and see if I can stop Galactus. Here is Galactus, illustrated beautifully. Great character design by Jack Kirby, and it's done beautifully here by John Buscema. So Galactus, as things turn out, needs a herald to go fly ahead and scout out planets for him. And so our man, the Silver Surfer, says, you know what? If it will save my planet, I will sacrifice myself and my life. I will become your herald and I'll follow your orders. I'll do whatever you say, man. Just don't destroy my homeworld. And in this wonderful, wonderful scene, he is reborn. Norrin Radd. I forgot to mention his name. He was Norrin Radd. That's the Silver Surfer's real name. Anyway, Norrin Radd is reborn. And look at that just glorious scene where Galactus transforms Norrin Radd into the Silver Surfer. It's just beautiful. And all of these earlier issues of the Silver Surfer are just glorious. And so he has to leave his beloved and fulfill his promise to Galactus. Now, if you read those earlier Silver Surfer stories, you know how that turned out. He ends up stuck in the space of Earth. He tries to get out, but he can't get past the barrier that Galactus has put up. Now, the following issues, the Silver Surfer goes up against various villains that are very, very powerful for the most part. He goes up against very powerful villains because the Silver Surfer is a very powerful character. And in so doing, we see some of the best and the worst of humanity. And we see it all through the Silver Surfer's eyes. And the Silver Surfer, again, speaking for Stan Lee, is talking about just, he always has these long soliloquies about, you know, what's wrong with you people? But you know what? I'm the Silver Surfer. And in this wonderful little scene, he says, though I am shunned by those who dwell below, still do they have need of my power. A power which must never be denied them, not so long as they are plagued by poverty and want, the cancer of crime, and the brutal scourge of tyranny. So even though everybody hates the Silver Surfer because everybody's afraid of him, you know what? He's going to use his power to help people. Because here's the thing about the Silver Surfer. He is a truly noble character. He is one of the most noble characters in the Marvel Universe. And like I said, an extremely powerful one. So he goes up against villain after villain and has these wonderful battles and things. But when he gets to the big one, Mephisto, those issues, man, when he goes up against Mephisto, it's the best. Now this is Mephisto, who's basically, you know, the devil there. And he is the ultimate villain for the Silver Surfer. And these issues with Mephisto are just, they're just so good. I mean, artistically, they're magnificent. I mean, this is one of the very famous illustrations of Mephisto there. I mean, John Buscema, I mean, he just does such a rock-solid, beautiful job in these issues where the Silver Surfer goes up against Mephisto. And Shala is back. She is back, and she is the one that the Silver Surfer must save from Mephisto. These early issues were inked, by the way, for the most part by Sal Buscema, the brother of John Buscema. Sal Buscema is a really, really good inker. He prefers inking, actually. He has said so. And he does a magnificent job inking these issues. He inked a lot of the earlier Conan issues, too. And, I mean, just look at that. I mean, it's just, the artwork in this is just, over the top great. So the Mephisto issues were glorious. Some of the best comic book art you'll ever see. We have Thor there showing up. We have a lot of guest stars that show up. Because inexplicably, possibly it was the price, but the Silver Surfer, as magnificent as it was, didn't sell as well as they were hoping. So they put a lot of guest stars in here throughout the issues. Thor, Spider-Man shows up. It's eventually, after the first 7 issues, I think, they changed the format and they go back to a regular comic book length format. Let me see. This is... Oh, and the Omnibus, I should say, is fantastic because we have the original letters pages in the Omnibus. So it's really cool for that. Yeah, number 7, I believe, when he goes up against the heir of Frankenstein, is the last of the longer issues. Or is there one more? Was there an 8th? Let me see. I think it was 7. Yeah, number 8 is just a 15-cent issue. Also, in some of the later issues, Dan Adkins starts inking the issues. And it's not bad. I just don't think it's as good as Sal's issues. Although the artwork is still pretty great from John Buscema. Eventually, towards the end of this run, John Buscema leaves. There's like one more issue. What's the last issue here? The last issue was issue 18. And in this last issue, it wasn't initially planned to be the last issue, it looked like. They brought in Jack Kirby. I think maybe it was a last-ditch attempt to save this comic because it wasn't selling, like I said, particularly well, even though it was fantastic. Unfortunately, the last issue was inked by Herb Trimpe. And it was terribly inked. It's hard to tell for me exactly how good this would be if it didn't have Herb Trimpe inking it. It might have been good, but as it is, it doesn't look like particularly good Jack Kirby artwork, which is surprising. But that could be the inking job by Herb Trimpe. And that was the last gasp of this comic book, which in itself was, like I said, beautiful. A beautiful work of art. John Buscema, some of John Buscema's best work, if not his best work, were those initial 7 or 8 issues of the Silver Surfer. In fact, everything he did in here was pretty good, although some of the inking wasn't as good in the later issues as they were in the earlier issues, that's for sure. Sorry about that jarring cut. I got a phone call, which I forgot to turn off the phone. I'm an idiot. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. So the Silver Surfer disappeared for a long time after that series, but he did make a reappearance, which you can find in this Epic Collection. This is the 3rd volume, the 3rd Epic Collection. Remember, the 2nd Epic Collection, which is everything in this, has not been published yet. Ton of Silver Surfer Epic Collections have been published, but not the best Silver Surfer stories. Go figure. But anyway, Silver Surfer eventually returned, and you could find those issues in Freedom, most of which were penciled by... Who did most of the penciling in this? John Byrne, Marshall Rogers, Joe Stanton. So, a lot of good stuff in this. But it's not as good as the stuff I just showed you. Although, some of these Silver Surfer stories were pretty cool. I like the initial Silver Surfer showed up for like 1 issue by John Byrne, which was really good. And then the more famous return by Steve Englehart. Did Steve Englehart write that? Yeah, he did. That was the first issue of his return to his longer running series. This has 14 issues of that. So, you know, Silver Surfer did come back, and he's come back a time or two. But for me, the stuff in here is the very, very best. And that's all I have to say for the Silver Surfer today. I've probably gone on long enough. Be sure to catch Steve Donoghue's video and see what he has to say about the Silver Surfer. And I will catch you tomorrow, I'm hoping. It's Thursday, and I forget what I'm doing doing tomorrow. I'm doing something tomorrow, but I can't remember at this very moment what it is. Whatever it is, it's going to be a thrill ride of excitement. Okay, guys, I will catch you next time.